So yes guys, hello and welcome back to the Templeton Triathlete YouTube channel. You join me in this video for my full race debrief of the Northumbrian 2025, where I managed to once again take the victory, take the W and come across the line in first place. What I'm going to do here is try and set the video up so it can be an sort of analysis or inspection tool for anyone looking to take part in the race, and also then give a debrief of how my race went yesterday. So I'll try my best to put in timestamps within the video in the description to say if it's me talking about the race generally or talking about my experience of the race on the day. To give a general overview, this is the third time that I've been at this race. So I was there for the inaugural event in 2022, then went back in 2024, and again this year, 2025, back to Kielder for the Northumbrian. So yeah, let's get started. Race morning, woke up, the weather could not have been better. The day before on the Saturday, yes, it's been mild on the lead-in, but it was just wet and miserable and damp, and yeah, the wind as well. It was reasonably windy on the Saturday, but by the Sunday morning, blue skies, glorious sunshine. The water was near enough perfectly calm. There wasn't too much wind. Yeah, I couldn't ask for much better. Then looking sort of into the numbers and the statistics of the event, for the triathlon portion of the Northumbrian that was being hosted, you had about 250 triathletes or aquabike athletes in total, the majority being in the the majority being in the half distance, and then probably about like 20% or so of them being in the full distance, and then just a handful taking on the aquabike. Then also on the race morning, for the first time they hosted trail running events, so a 28k and a 50km distance race. And yeah, across the two of those events, it was in and around 100 athletes. So it was a good buzz at the start line. You're talking 300, 350 people. Again, with all the support crews that everyone has at these events. So it's not as mobbed as one of these big franchise events. You're talking Challenge, T100 or Ironman. But it's not that you're standing there with just 2 or 3 people from the surrounding area. Okay, so having a look at the course, again, we'll start with the swim. So, general statistics, it is a 2-lap swim for the half distance, 4 laps for the full. You've got 4 buoys that you take on in an anti-clockwise direction. And yeah, you head out, do one loop, keeping the buoys to your left, do another loop, keeping the buoys to your left. But then on that final loop, what you'll do when you come up to the final buoy that you've passed just at the start-finish area, as opposed to going diagonally back to the shoreline, you have to then take that final buoy on your right-hand side, just so you're completing essentially 2 full squares rather than potentially cutting across too early or yeah, just missing some of the distance. This was unfortunately the issue faced by one of the top swimmers yesterday. I think they were coming out the water in first, and they were sent back to go and swim round that last buoy with having it on the right hand side. Of course, the challenge here then becomes, well, if I'm doing the half distance and doing 2 laps, and the full distance is doing 4, you'll be finishing up, taking that one on the right, and they'll be finishing up, they'll be then going on to the 3rd lap, going round the left. There could be potential collisions. Again, it's one of those ones where you want to keep it fair and try and keep the distance equal for everyone. But yeah, it's just a challenge of race day that you have to deal with. And yeah, race morning yesterday, the water, like I've said just there, unbelievably calm. The first couple of times that I've done it, it is just in like a big lake. It's in Kielder water, so there's no major current or stream or flow of water going through, but there is just general chop most of the time. No matter what side you're breathing to, yeah, you'll probably get splashed in the face quite a bit. But yesterday it was completely different. I was near enough perfectly calm, and yeah, it was a really good experience. So the weather definitely had a big impact. And now looking into my own experience of the swim yesterday, I started off probably in about the fourth or fifth wave, and yeah, I don't know if any of you who have watched my videos before will believe me. I should have started further up. I was maybe in the same boat in Bolton, but not by as much as this. The first 150 metres there was a bit of congestion. So yeah, I managed to get through that. And then I thought I was swimming a decent pace most of the way round. But when I came out the water, the previous year I'd went like just over 36 minutes. And this time round I was 39 minutes, which I was a little bit disappointed with. I think with the way the boys were, they were maybe a wee bit further spread out, so it was maybe a bit over 1900 metres. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. I thought, yeah, I'm feeling great in the water here, I'm cruising along. And then, yeah, I pressed the lap button, and 38 minutes was not what I was wanting to see. Into transition. And yeah, the transitions for this event, it's just one transition space. You rack your bike, you put your running shoes there, you're going to and from that one space, which does make it a lot easier logistically for race day. And yeah, my experience in transition on the day, I was quick out my wetsuit. I managed to get it whipped off. That was one of the goals of the race, was trying to make sure that I wasn't spending too much time in transitions like I seem to always do in these races. However, I had the wetsuit off, helmet on, sunglasses on, and the choice was trying to then put the kind of thicker gloves on that I wore at Bolton that I feel did help temperature wise. I spent a good 45 seconds, maybe even a minute, drying my hands off trying to get these gloves on. They eventually did not go on, and I just left them. But again, I don't feel it had a massive impact on my race. Yeah, the temperature, again, the sun was out, no wind. I was able to heat up pretty quick, so that was fine. Now, moving on to the bike course, the way it's sort of set up is you'll head out on this sort of more single track road out from Kielder Water, going downhill or net downhill for 20 kilometres, and then you'll hit the main road where you do one big loop of about 50 kilometres, and then it's that first 20k you'll do in reverse coming back up. The route itself, yeah, it's very scenic, it's absolutely beautiful. Again, when the sun was out yesterday, just the views across the hills and the mountains, and again on these really quiet roads. The race is on open roads, except for that first and last 20k strip, but I was lucky if I seen 2 cars the whole day. So yeah, it's definitely one where if you want the peace of mind of just being a bit safer on open roads, this is an event to do. And yeah, the terrain is definitely hilly. Across the 90 kilometre distance, it was about 1100 metres of climbing, maybe 1200 metres, depending if you're using your Wahoo or your Garmin, but definitely a hilly race. Mostly just spread out. There's a couple of sections within the course where you're climbing for a decent amount of time, but it's just the sort of general rolling terrain, slightly rising, slightly descending gradients that build up that elevation over time. The road surfaces as well, again, it's as good as you're going to get really with any British race. There's some sections that are, yeah, pretty decent, and then other ones where you're kind of just wanting to be a bit more aware, maybe sit up off the tri-bars for a moment, maybe make sure your bottles are clipped in fully so they don't launch out. And yeah, sort of looking at my own race experience. So again, I've came out the water and I thought I would have been swimming better, seen the time of 38, 39 minutes, and yeah, so I was thinking, right, I'll maybe be a wee bit further back. Looking at the results from the race, I actually did have the 6th fastest swim of the day. The fastest person out the water was just over 32 minutes. So again, I'm still a good 7 minutes back, but in relation to Bolton, The fastest swimmer there was under 24, and I was about 30 minutes, or just over 30 minutes, so again about 6 minutes, and that course was shorter than 1900 metres, most definitely. So it's within the same sort of range, time-wise, that I was behind the top swimmers. Then was just in transition as well with the lead woman. So I thought, right, okay, she's just leaving. I might see her out in the course. That'll be someone that I can track as I'm going along. Headed out of transition area and then passed someone within the first couple of Ks. Passed someone, I think, in a relay team at about 15 kilometres in. And then, yep, I was out onto the main loop. And at the first climbing section, I go back to shift my front chain ring into the small ring, and it doesn't work. It doesn't shift. It's not the batteries in the shifters themselves, because I'm going up and down the gears when in the big ring. And then even coming out of transition, it's quite a steep ramp, so I'd been in the small ring and moved it into the big ring. So I knew it had worked already, or I didn't realise it initially, but eventually I clocked on, no, I have shifted at least once within this race. So it must just be that the connection of the battery isn't sitting right. So I hit this first climb. There's someone else there, the only other person that I see the whole day. So this is at 25 kilometres in. I'm trying to shift into the small ring and I'm grinding past him at like 40 RPM. He must just be looking at me like, what is he doing? And he says, well done, keep going. I say back to him, and then I'm pedalling away and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to need to stop at some point, because there is no way I'm going to be able to do this full bike just in the big ring. Even with the kind of smaller chain ring setup that I have and the wider cassette at the back with the SRAM setup, yeah, there was no way I was keeping it in the big ring the full time round. So I then had decided, after descending, so at 30k, I was descending down for a bit, I knew the next major climb was at about 37 kilometres into the course. So I'd hit that, and it was shallower slopes to begin with. And yeah, I just pulled the brakes on the bike, came to a complete stop, took the little battery off the front chainring, put it back on, and thankfully, thank goodness, it then started working again. Yeah, I was incredibly lucky to have that happen. To just know that it was just a connection. Must have went over a speed bump or something that made it jump out a little bit, but it started working again. So that was, what, like 45 seconds, 60 seconds in the end up, but as soon as I started riding away, I already knew at that point this was the right decision to make. Because yeah, my legs just would have been unbelievably cooked if I tried to ride around at 40 RPM up some of these climbs. And then beyond that point, I made it past that second big climb at that sort of 40k range. Came across the top of that and I'm thinking, wow, my legs are pretty cooked. I was struggling along. The wind had picked up ever so slightly, and it was at a point when you're then cycling directly into the headwind. So on the draggy sections of road, it's sort of 2-3% gradient, where if there's no wind, it's big ring, but if it's a little bit windy, you're sort of stuck in between. I was pedalling along, and again, on my bike, my outdoor bike, the power meter doesn't work as well, so all I'm sort of looking at is heart rate. Again, that was one of the things that I'd looked at when I was in Bolton, and I'd realised in Bolton when I was on the descents my heart rate would still drop. So I thought, okay, I'm still recovering, still feeling fresh enough once I got back to the run. In Northumbrian, my heart rate wasn't dropping as much, and I was definitely suffering. So yeah, I'd made it to sort of one of the longer descent sections, and I just thought I just need to try and get as much carbohydrate in as possible. So with the bars that I'd chopped up to eat sort of little and often throughout the bike, I must have consumed about 3 of the bars in the one go. So I don't even know, like 100, yeah, maybe like 100 grams of carbohydrate in there within the space of 5 minutes. And then I had my 2 beta fuel bottles with carb mix there as well. I was just drinking as much as that as I could. Eventually, the legs started to come round. My heart rate did drop a little bit. But again, I was just pedalling away on my own, no one around me. And I'm thinking, where even is the lead woman? What is going on here? Where is the rest of the bikers? Even to have someone with one of the disc wheels come by, and that kind of whoom, whoom, whoom noise. Nope, didn't experience it all day. Later on, I did find out that the lead woman had to turn back at one point or quite early on within the bike group, because she had a mechanical, which is a real shame. But yeah, so I spent the full day, so from 25 kilometres, after I'd passed that guy in the hill when I couldn't shift. Oh no, there was actually one other person on that climb when I took the battery off and put it back in. That was the last person that I saw. So again, at about 40 kilometres in, I was then just on my own the whole day. A very strange and surreal experience. It made it much more of a training day, especially when I went from feeling cooked to then start to feeling better as well, but having no gauge of where everyone was around me. Very, very strange. And then, like always, I just started to need the toilet again as well. So I got to like 70 kilometres just before I'm turning back up to the initial 20 kilometres that came down. There's an aid station and a portaloo at the bottom of that, and I thought, you know what, I'll just stop here. So I did stop in, went to the toilet quickly, back on the bike, and then it was a great tailwind all the way back to transition, which made everything a lot better. I was starting to feel good at that point. And yeah, got back into transition. Was fairly swift through there because I'd been to the toilet just 20 kilometres before, and that takes us on to the run. So looking at the run route, just generally, well, sort of including my experience, for the half distance it's 2 laps, the full distance 4 laps, around this 10.5 kilometre trail loop. The first few Ks are sort of rolling up and down, and then when you're on the back half, it definitely gets a bit hillier. A few sharp, steep ramps, and then one long drag for about maybe like 1,500 metres, 2 kilometres uphill, and then you're on a kind of sharp descent downhill for 800 metres, and it's back to the start-finish area where we then do a loop and do the next lap. The trails themselves are definitely kept in good condition. From the Saturday when I'd went out just for a pre-race activation run, when it had been wet, there was quite a lot of puddles and surface water, but thankfully that had cleared for the Sunday morning race. So yeah, I guess if it was to have been wet on race day, it could have had more of an impact. And yeah, the trails themselves sort of mix between kind of stone trails at some sections, and then just sort of pine droppings from the trees and the forests around other sections. The shoes I was wearing, I had my usual Nike Alpha Flies on. Is that the best shoe for the course? Probably not. However, it's a very specific shoe that would be best. It's one of these trail race carbon plated ones, which is a kind of small market, and it's a shoe that you would only use in very specific scenarios, unless trail racing is more your forte. Yeah, so I just use the Alpha Flies, but definitely if you are wearing a sort of high stack shoe that is slightly more unstable and is more suited for those straight lines on perfect tarmac, just make sure that you've done some good strength training, more so like lower shins, ankle area, because especially when you start hitting the uphills on the second lap, the fatigue that you can feel is quite extreme. So yeah, just make sure that you've done the strength training alongside the run volume as well. And looking at my own experience on race day, I'd went out and came out of the transition zone at first, and the announcer, Mr. Brian Porter, who was there again, he had said to me, 19 minutes down, run strong. I was like, what? 19 minutes down? I came into the transition area and only seen like 2 or 3 other bikes. But to be told I'm 19 minutes down was quite a shock. I couldn't really believe it. So I just set off at a decent pace. Again, I'd fueled well on the bike. Didn't feel like I had any stomach problems or anything. Was cruising along. I did tell myself to hold it back ever so slightly on that first lap, just so I could get a feel for the climbs again. Having done the race twice before, knowing what the climbs were like definitely did make a big difference. When you hit them for the first time, if you don't know what's coming up, it would be a massive shock. But yeah, I felt pretty good, just cruising along, and then was just about a kilometre from the end of the first lap, and I'd seen one other athlete running in front of me, and I thought, all right, here we go. So then I passed them, and that 100 metres in front of him was someone on a mountain bike wearing a high vis. And then I'm like, no way. And I'd got back to the transition area to start my second lap, and the announcer guy's like, Adam's in the lead, he's in the lead. So somehow I'd made up those 18 minutes within one lap. The gentleman that was out in the run before me ended up finishing third. He is an aquabike athlete specifically, and he was going to do the aquabike race on its own, but he'd seen that there was only like 4 others on the start list, was kind of wanting to get back into triathlons again, I think, and felt bad because he would have just obliterated the competition in that field, so decided to take on the half marathon as well. So yeah, definitely the run training, he probably hadn't been doing much. He didn't even have his carbon race day shoes with him, he was just wearing his generic Asics. So yeah, kudos for him to still hold on to the podium on that one. But yeah, I'd passed him at that point, and yeah, again, I still couldn't quite believe it. It was quite surreal. I'm thinking, no way, I'm actually in the lead again. This time a little bit earlier. So I still kept the foot on the gas, kept pushing on, and yeah, as I'd been going through the aid stations, I've been thinking, no, I won't take a gel on here. I won't take any liquid on here, just because I'd eaten quite a lot in the bike, and then I felt maybe a tiny bit unsettled. Yeah, I'd made it to one of the aid stations about 4 kilometres into the second lap, took a splash of water, and I got about 50 mils of that, and that was pretty much the race nutrition that I had on the run. I would not recommend doing that at all. Do not. You need to keep the fueling going, because the danger of the bonk, especially on a course like that, when I was there in 2022 and I had to walk up those hills on the second lap, that was grim. So yeah, I did roll the dice big style on that one. However, I did hold it together and crossed the finish line, retaining my first place position, and actually ended up running 3 minutes faster than I did last year, which I didn't feel I was doing. I didn't feel I was, but I think I held a much more consistent pace across the 2 laps. And yeah, as well, when I was coming into the finish, normally the lead bike would go round with you the whole way, but I think the way I was running and just sort of on the gravel trails, it was sort of a surgy pace of me going up and down the hills, but then his e-mountain bike would speed up too much and he'd go away, and then when I'd slow down he'd then skid to stop. So I was just running the second lap on my own, so I came into the finish and they didn't have the banner or anything set up anyway. So you'll probably see that in the official Northumbrian race day video. And then when I did have it and I was holding it up at first, it was upside down. So then I eventually had to flip it around and get a couple of finishing photos there. But yeah, the race itself, sort of now looking at the overall experience, it is just a great event. There's just such a nice buzz about it. It shows truly what a more grassroots triathlon event can be. Yes, it's hosted by Events of the North, which is a major organiser up here in the north of England. But yeah, it just feels more like a close, compact community when you're standing on the start line beside everyone else, and it's not thousands of people, it's only a few hundred. And yeah, what else have I got noted on my notes here? Oh, and then as well, yeah, because there was all the aquabike races and yeah, the trail races going on at the same time. It made it really exciting, and yeah, just more. There was so many more people coming across the line within every few minutes, that it just kept much more of a better buzz at the finish line than there has been previously. Normally there'd be one person crossing the line and one other, but now with the trail race being included, their race starting a little bit later, it did mean that the majority of people were coming across the line at the same time, so that was really good to see as well. And yeah, just organised perfectly. The kind of the volunteers, like always, absolutely brilliant. Just made the day that much more special. And yeah, I guess that sort of brings us to the end of the full race day analysis. Again, today I don't actually feel too sore. I think in the past, like I've said before in videos, it's when the cold gets to me that I end up riding too stiff and tense in my shoulders. But because it was a bit warmer at the event yesterday, I feel a lot more relaxed in my upper body. Like I was saying there, for the run, you need to have strong lower shins and ankles. I feel it a wee bit today in my ankles, but sort of quads and lats, nothing out of the ordinary, which is good. And yeah, I think I've covered pretty much everything. If there is anything else, any other questions that people have about the event, about race day, about the organisations of it, be sure to put your questions in the comments below and let me know, and I'll reply back to you and see if I can give you an answer. If not, I can point you in the right direction of where you'll get those answers. And yeah, if you are thinking about taking on the Northumbrian in 2026, I would highly, highly recommend it. Yeah, just the buzz, the feel, the atmosphere, the course. So long as the weather's permitted, even when the weather isn't that great, it's still just a solid course to do. Very honest, and you'll definitely know you'll have done a middle distance triathlon by the end of it. And yeah, if you did enjoy this one today and you did find it helpful, be sure to hit the like button and share with others if they are also thinking about taking on the Northumbrian. And if you're new around here and you want to keep up with the rest of my triathlon journey and follow me for all the other races that I'm doing, make sure you press subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.